Ladies and gentlemen, we've got RJ Ochoa on here from Blogging the Boys. SB Nation does a great job covering the Cowboys, and I know we're very Texas centric here, right? I mean, we've got the overlay here live from Fort Worth. We're a very proud DFW out here, and so it's great to have you on, RJ.
Thanks for having me, Brian. Really appreciate it. I've never lived in DFW myself, but everyone I know and have interacted with, there's a great level of pride from every sector, but particularly from the Fort Worth folks, in my experience. So I'm glad to see that you're living that up, living true to that reputation.
Absolutely. No, Fort Worthians are very proud Cowboy fans, and I'll be transparent with you here. I'm not a Cowboys fan myself. I worked for them for a little bit over a year. Great organization, loved working there, but all great people. But I grew up a Patriots fan, and so that's my team. But I have nothing but love and admiration for the Cowboys because it truly is the gold standard of how an organization should be run. I mean, it was amazing seeing it behind the scenes. So always love talking Cowboys and getting into the nuts and bolts.
No, totally. It's a unique world, to say the least.
Absolutely, it is. There's nothing really like it in professional sports, so it fascinates me. And something that fascinated me yesterday was all of these trades that went down. Right there were some buzzer beaters. It was slow for a while, but there were some real buzzer beaters that took place right before the end of the trade deadline here. And the Cowboys were very heavily involved in that drama. Jerry teased something on Monday about there's a defensive trade done. And I was at the bar and I saw this, and I'm like, I wonder what this could be. I'm theorizing, is it Hendrickson? Is it Max Crosby? Who is this? And then we saw who it was. So I'll ask you first, RJ, since it was the first one that went down Tuesday. What do you think of the Logan Wilson trade?
So obviously the Logan Wilson trade was the only thing they did for a few hours, and that trade broke about 6:30 a.m. Central Standard Time, and I think that in a vacuum the trade was phenomenal. The value for it, I mean, you're talking about a 7th-round draft pick for a really good veteran player who you have 2 years of team control over. Leadership guy who's been to a Super Bowl. I mean, again, like the trade is awesome. My only negative emotions about it at that time, which was obviously before the Quinnen Williams trade, which changes the context of everything. My only negative emotions were it just felt kind of sad. I mean, it just felt like, they just had to do something. I mean, it just felt my son, it will be 4 this month, and it just felt like when I tell him not to do something, and the very first thing he does is like to go and touch that or mess with that or not do the thing that I told him to do, whatever. And it just kind of felt like you guys really can't help yourself. You just have to be involved. You have to be the story. And the day aged well for them, obviously, with the Quinnen Williams trade. But that was truly how I felt about it. Now I feel bad about it because I feel for Logan and that no one is talking about him. No one even remembers at this point that he was acquired by way of trade. And bless you. And so it was an interesting ride, to say the least. But it became an afterthought, obviously, after the trade in the afternoon.
Well, I saw it come out in the morning, and I'm like, Logan Wilson. I'm like, is that the big trade that Jerry was teasing this whole time? I'm like, there's no way. I mean, I had people like in my office laughing. They're like, there's no way he came out and teased this yesterday, and this is it. Little did we know that it was the dinner salad, the wedge salad that was leading up to the steak frites that appeared later in the day. But Logan Wilson is coming off of a calf injury, right? So he's had limited snaps with the Bengals thus far this year. How do you think he's going to factor into the Cowboys' equation these weeks to come? They've got a bye week. They got some time to get him used to the system. How do you think it all pans out?
Yeah, I think the reality is the defense is horrible, and they're arguably worst there. And I think like with Micah for a while, DeMarvion Overshown gets lumped into the linebacker conversation, although he obviously can rush the passer and be utilized a number of different ways. And so when you're talking about classic, true, literal play the position all the time linebackers, he's the best one. I mean, that's just kind of what this is at this point. And some of that is because he is pretty good, and some of that is just because of the room. The Kenneth Murray trade didn't take. The Jack Sanborn free agency signing hasn't happened. Shamar James has had some bright moments, obviously, throughout his brief rookie year to this point, but you need a guy who knows what he's doing. And so I expect him to kind of be thrown into the deep end, and he's someone who knows how to swim in that respect. And so I don't know that it stabilizes everything, but I do think that it helps just calm the waters enough to at least get out and surf a few, minutes of the day, as opposed to not being able even to get anywhere near the waters with what they had going on prior to this.
Yeah, it's definitely a cushion for this Cowboys defense, because I was out at a bar watching it Monday night because I'm still figuring out my whole YouTube TV whatever situation right now. It's a fiasco, but I'll have it fixed for this weekend. Best believe it. But I was out just watching the Cowboys defense, and the physicality, the fundamentals were just not there. And it's at the point now, at this point in the season, where it's starting to have an inverse effect, and it's impacting the offense. Now, I think the offense has gotten more lethargic because they've had the pressure put on them for 7-8 weeks here. And the bye week came at a good time, and where the Cowboys sit, I don't think they're completely out of it. I think it's an uphill climb, not completely out of it. But getting somebody like Logan Wilson and just hearing what the Bengals had to say about him and seeing it exemplified. He is a great leader. He's a great presence on the field. He's old. He's getting older. Late 20s. He's starting to get out of his athletic prime. But where he's at right now, I think that he's somebody that can jump in and make that Cowboys defense be a little bit more, at least a little more poignant than it is right now.
Yeah, and I think if anything's become clear as the dust has settled and we kind of establish more time and more opportunities to kind of look at everything and absorb what they did and what it means moving forward. I think and they'll do their radio hits on the Fan, and they'll talk about how they still have belief this year. And look, if they make the playoffs, none of us are going to be upset about that. But I think we all understand that Logan Wilson and Quinnen Williams are here to help 2026 and 2027. These to me were advanced moves that they could or should have done, obviously, in March or April, that they maybe paid a little bit different of a price to get some action in 2025 on. And you could look at that as an opportunity for them to learn and grow and help develop chemistry and relationships with players they're going to be playing with over the course of the next 2 years. But yeah, I mean, I think anybody who's expecting either of these players, and Logan, with all due respect, is not the player that Quinnen Williams is. Anyone who's expecting them to come in and save the day, I think is a little bit disconnected from reality.
And that's the gap in perception that I want to address here, because that has kind of been the conversation is they're going to come in and make Dallas a contender. This is going to be a slow burn. I mean, you don't, with any player, any position, you don't just plug somebody in and boom, like they've got it. This is a completely new look. This maybe if the Cowboys defense was in a state where they really were just a few players away from being dynamic, but it's going to take. Well, Logan Wilson and Quinnen Williams are a great start,
right?
But that was, I believe, statistically the 31st best defense in the NFL. I believe since he's only behind them, it's going to take a lot to get that defense in shape.
Yeah, it feels to me like when you haven't been to the gym in a while, or you haven't gone for a run in a while, and you go the first time, you hit the run for the first time, you get on the treadmill or whatever, and it's the worst. It's just horrible. Yeah. It's just painful, and you're frustrated because you're doing this because you want to be fit or healthier or whatever, and you're just not at that point yet because you haven't put in the time, put in the work, built up the endurance, built up the muscle. I don't mean to get into the weeds. And so this was day one on the treadmill. That's what this was. And so, you've got to come back for day 2 now. You can't just, all of a sudden step on the scale the next morning and expect that everything is exactly the way you want it to be. And then even when you do reach the point that you're aiming for, whatever, how many pounds you want to lose, if we stick with the analogy, then you have to maintain it. It isn't just we get there and then we stop working out, we stop going to the gym, we stop going for runs. No, you have to then you have to eat right. You have to shop for the right foods. Like your lifestyle has to change, which has been the issue with this organization for a very long time.
Yes, making that lifestyle and that culture just repetitious. That's the consistency has been an issue. Like we've seen rises with the Cowboys, right? And it feels like it's every 2 or 3 years. You're like, oh wow, this team could be a Super Bowl contender. They're 13-4. This could be a Super Bowl contender. And then the year after it dips, and that has a lot to do with it. When it comes to the Logan Wilson trade, what would you grade it?
I mean, I think you have to give it an A. I mean, again, you're talking about a 7th-round draft pick for a really good player, even if you think he's a moderately good player. I mean, it's the return on investment is significant. And so in a vacuum, I mean, it's a better trade in a vacuum than the Quinnen Williams one is, even though he's not the player that Quinnen is, just because of what you paid to acquire him.
Yeah. I completely agree. At first, I was like, Logan Wilson, and then the more I thought about, the more I ruminated on, I think it's definitely in that B+, A- A range, to where I think it was timely, right thing at the right time. And now Quinnen Williams, and he's an Alabama guy, so I'm happy to see a Bama guy. I'm very proud to see a Bama guy on this Cowboy roster. Yet another one, to join Trayvon Diggs. It's great, but he's been one of the most dynamic defensive tackles in the NFL over these past several years, and he is an immediate impact player. Like you were saying, for anybody, it's going to take a while to get the use of the system, but Quinn Williams is a dynamic player. Granted, the contract that the Cowboys absorbed is quite large, but he's somebody whose impact is going to be through the roof, and so. What are your thoughts on the Quinnen Williams trade?
I think that this, I think that there's been a lot of, we're talking like 30 hours after the trade happened. And there's been a lot of hindsighters saying, oh, and look, I wrote something for our website that was the net aggregate results of the Micah trade and the Logan Wilson trade and the Quinnen Williams trade, just kind of everything they've given up and everything they've returned. I don't think it would be rational or wise or even just like bare minimum logical to say this was the long-term plan. This was the goal all along. I think that they wake up and decide what they want to do on that day in question, and the day after they wake up and decide what they want to do, and it doesn't have to jive with what they did the day prior. And so I think trying to make sense of the Quinnen Williams trade through the prism of having traded away Micah is just a fool's errand. You're just not going to be able to do that. You're wasting energy trying to do so. So acknowledging that we all, I think, acknowledge that the Micah trade was silly. It should have never happened. It should have never come to that. They should have gotten more for him, which is underscored by the fact that Sauce Gardner effectively went for the same compensation. Again, we can sit here and mount a just mountain-sized defense against the Cowboys and the process of how they got here. But the fact that they did get here, I mean, they did get on the treadmill to stick, to the analogy we were using a moment ago. That's what the Quinnen trade to me feels like. It feels like a matter of, okay, we messed up. We know, like we dug this hole and we have to get out. And so I commend them for that. And I commend them for, you mentioned Trey Hendrickson, not trading for Trey Hendrickson. That would have been the worst possible case scenario. And I think that so many people have looked at the Logan Wilson trade kind of gets lost in the fold because of who Quinnen Williams is. And they feel like, or the general opinion is, well, why are they trading for Quinnen Williams? That they're not close now. Yeah, we all agree with you. They're not close now. They're probably not going to make the playoffs now. They traded for Quinnen Williams to help their defense in the future, and he certainly will. Is he Micah Parsons? I really don't care. Like I don't have the energy myself to have that conversation because that is obtuse and just trying to live in the meme world of who the Cowboys are most of the time. So I think that the fact that they didn't have to give up either of their 2026 first round draft picks was a significant win. It's a bummer. Obviously, they have to give up the better of their first round picks in 2027, but that's what it took to get the deal done. And so my biggest criticism of them, and the verbiage I've stuck with for years now, is that they have not had a North Star. I'm super fine if I disagree with your North Star. If you want to tank, and I think you shouldn't, fine, whatever. But at least all of your energy and devotion, your time, your energy, your resources has to be motivated or pushing towards one agenda. And that has not been the case for them. And this was a step towards an actual North Star. So the fact that it's Quinnen Williams makes it even better and amplifies the coolness of that to me. But the fact that they seemingly have a legitimate plan for the first time since Green Bay kicked their teeth in the playoffs, almost 2 years ago, that's the biggest point of fresh air for me, and that's why I'm most excited about
it. I like vision. I like sense of direction. And to your point, whether it's forward progression or whether you're tanking, you've got to be committed. I've always said I would rather be, to make the comparison of last year, I would rather be the 3-14 Titans, knowing that I'm tanking, knowing that I'm damn well getting Cam Ward in the first rounds, and we're building this thing from the ground up. Give us a couple years, we'll be back. I'm okay with that. Obviously, you're perfectly fine with being the Buffalo Bills or the Detroit Lions or the Eagles right now. Like, yeah, we're chasing a ring. That's great. You've dedicated years of resources and time and research and development to that point. I hate to be those teams in the middle. Last year, like your Cowboys, right? I mean, that's your perfect example. Like your 7-10, 8-9 teams who don't really know where they're going. That is the worst spot that you can be in football, honestly.
Yeah, last year was just toxic and annoying. I mean, every day from the moment they lost to the Packers, even until after it ended, but the way they handled Mike McCarthy. And what annoyed me the most, the comment I would get the most in my DMs or mentions or whatever, anytime something happened, would be, they're clearly doing this. They're clearly soft tanking. They're clearly resetting. There was no clearly anything. There was no one plan. I mean, they waited until the 11th hour to pay both CD and Dak, and then obviously, and in the same season, sent Mike McCarthy into a contract year with a defensive coordinator who was around for one season because nobody in their right mind would have joined him. And then they let Mike McCarthy float in the wind for a week and costed themselves, you mentioned the Lions, the opportunity to virtually interview their two coordinators who both got head coaching jobs, and Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn. And then they promoted Brian Schottenheimer, who they really value because of his contributions, somebody who Mike McCarthy discovered, which is just ironic in a weird and twisted sense. And then forget last season, this offseason, they, make it very well known that they want a wide receiver after having traded for Jonathan Mingo before the deadline last year. They don't get Ted McMillan in the first round. Immediately after the draft, they trade for George Pickens, who's in a contract year, which is a Kobayashi Maru that they can't solve, as we've seen time and time and time again. And then a few months later, trade away the best player on their team. So there's no clearly anything. They aren't clearly all in. They aren't clearly tanking. They're just, on Monday, they feel one thing. On Tuesday, it's another. On Wednesday, it may be one of those two. It may be something else entirely. And so, and look, this may not actually wind up being a step towards a North Star. This may have just been what they felt like doing this week. And I obviously hope that that's not the case, but it does smell like they have wised up a little bit and recognized that they were acting a bit immature, a bit silly, and a bit childish, and now might be time to start acting competent.
Yeah, I mean, there seemed to be a sense of direction. You addressed two position groups that were really weak, right? The defensive line, there's been no push, there's been no pass rush, no pressure whatsoever, and then linebacker core. I mean, that's been spotty at best too. So, addressing two weaknesses went a long way for the Cowboys. And with that said, what would you grade the Quinnen Williams trade?
I think it's a B+ to an A-, just kind of depending on the mood you're in. And also depending on how you're grading it. If you're grading it with regards to this season, I don't think you're being objective, as I've said already. But if you're grading it with regards to this season, then yeah, it might be an F, as ESPN outlined, because they're 3-5-1. Why would they trade for anybody? Why would they give up future draft capital? But if you view it as a premeditated move with regard to the future, then I think you should. I mean, you have to consider the contract that he has. You have to consider the fact that they have missed often in the first round recently at that position specifically, as evidenced by the fact that Mozzie Smith was involved in the trade. So, I mean, they got one of the best defensive players in the world on their team as a result of this trade. And so it's difficult to grade it below anything other than an A for me. That's why I would give it an A- on my worst day. But I could be talked into a B+, I suppose, if somebody makes a compelling argument.
That's fair. And we look at this team, like there are a lot of holes all over it. You know, we can acknowledge that, but it is great when you look at it, having one of the best offensive players in the world on one side of the ball, CeeDee Lamb, and one of the best defensive players in the world on the other side of the ball, in Quinn Williams. I mean, that's pretty damn good, and that's a start. That can be a foundation. And so, you mentioned the record, 3-5-1. Still can't believe that 40-40 game happened. That still just feels like a fever dream, even a month later. Where do you see the Cowboys going from here? Because yeah, there's the Raiders game, but then after that, it really. I hiked a lot in New York, and I skied a lot, and you know there's the bunny hop, the novice bunny hop. Then there's this intermediate square, then there's the diamonds, then there's your double diamonds. They got a little bunny hop after the bye week, and then you go straight from the bunny hop into the gondola up to the diamonds. So where do you think they go from here?
I think that I can give them the Raiders game and the remaining Washington and Giants games. Those I feel like, you know, you're not stretching at all to give them. So that puts them at 6 wins. And I'm willing to split the Vikings and Chargers games. I think that, you know, again, those teams have been kind of hot and cold, you know, hit or miss. So I think you catch one way or the other. So now we're up to 4 more wins. So now they're at 7. I think everyone who did a schedule prediction before the season began probably said to themselves they're going to split the series with the Eagles. If that were to run chalk, if that were to run true, that would be another, because they lost the first game. So now we've given them 5 more wins. And again, all of this sounds very optimistic. I recognize that. So, but that would put them at 8 wins on the season. They're probably going to need, because of the tie, 9 minimum to get into the playoffs. I do think that they're destined to finish 8-1, just because that would be the, you know, lowest hanging fruit joke of all time, you know, and whatnot. And then it would set up the, oh, you're really proud of finishing 500 after the trades. I mean, it would just be silly. And it would present a point of optimism and hope heading into next season. If Quinnen played well, if Logan Wilson played well, I mean, again, you can kind of just close your eyes and see that. So it comes down to, can they steal one between Detroit and Kansas City? Kansas City, those are both Thursday games. Kansas City on Thanksgiving, Detroit 7 days later on Thursday Night Football. Something I've been saying in the aftermath of the trades, I don't think it's impossible. I mean, it's very difficult, but it's not impossible to consider them ripping 3 in a row off, them beating the Raiders on Monday Night Football, and then taking that Eagles game. That would put them at 500. And then if they beat the Chiefs on Thanksgiving Day to get north of 500 and give themselves a 3-game winning streak, the hype would be off the rails. I mean, and if they were undefeated 3 games in a row, having won after the trades, I mean, it would be obnoxious. And then of course they would go to Detroit on Thursday Night Football and get smoked like 52-7 or something. But I do think that they're destined for 8-1. The schedule is intense. But it's only intense if you consider the Eagles to be intense, and they're a very good team. Don't get me wrong, but the Cowboys play them well and know them well, and so it's a little bit of a unique situation for them. And so it comes down to Kansas City and Detroit, and we've seen, you know, them each be hot and cold. It is the NFL, and anything can happen. But I think that they're probably going to finish 8-1, if I'm being honest.
That's around what I'm feeling too, is 7 or 8 wins. My preseason prediction, I had the Cowboys at 6-11. I think they're going to pass that. Just because I'm a big defensive guy, and I looked at that defense, and I had a lot of concerns, and I also didn't know how George Pickens was going to fit into the equation. Right. It's been great. I've been proven not wrong, but the people that were shouting from the mountaintops of George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb are going to be one of the most dynamic duos in the NFL. well, their claims have been solidified, and
Right.
to them, I tip my cap. But I really do deep down feel like this is going to be a photo finish for the Cowboys this year. I feel like looking at week 16, 17, 18, they're going to be right there in the hunt for that wild card, and it could either set up to be a triumphant wild card clincher out here, or devastating barely miss.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they're going to go into that in case you forgot, they also play on another Thursday. They play the Commanders on Christmas Day, which is a Thursday this year. That's on Netflix. It does kind of smell like they're going to go into that game with some stakes or in the mix, and they're going to get that win on Christmas Day and just kind of light the fire again, get everyone talking about them and ride the wave. And maybe it's not enough, but I will say a lot of people have compared the situation to 2000. You mentioned you're not a Cowboys fan, but in 2018, they traded for Amari Cooper, sent a first-round pick. They were 3-4 when they made that trade, and then they lost the first game with him, which was also on Monday Night Football. So they were 3-5, and they did rally to not only make the playoffs, but they won the division. They won a playoff game. Ironically enough, they beat Brian Schottenheimer. But what was different about then is the Eagles were also 3-4 when Dallas made that trade, and they're 6-2 now. But aside from the Eagles, the Washington franchise was actually kind of out in front in the division at that point. But that was unfortunately the year that Alex Smith suffered the devastating injury, and that really took them out of the mix. And so everything worked out for Dallas. And it's just very difficult, at least with regards to the division, to see the Eagles collapsing enough from this point. I mean, yes, Dallas has a game remaining against them, but they're 6-2. I mean, we're talking about, in the most optimistic sense here, the Cowboys finishing with 9 wins. There's just no way the Eagles are going to lose that many times between now and the rest of the season.
No, I mean they're positioned well to win that division, and especially the Giants beat them on Thursday night, right? I was like, oh, could that light a little fire underneath the Giants? And then ever since then, I mean, we've seen Scat go out, and I really think that team has lost its heartbeat, and the Giants are starting to face a lot of internal turmoil right now. I think that the push to start to move off of some leadership is starting to heat up as far as Dable and Shane go. I think it's starting to get pretty hot up in East Rutherford right now. Unfortunately, what just happened in Washington Sunday night with Jaden Daniels,
Right.
And you've got some Scary Terry out a little bit too. It's tough times in our nation's capital right now as well. So it's really a one-dog race. I mean, Philly is going to win the division. There's no way they're not going to. But I think look at the rest of the NFC, the Cowboys are absolutely going to make a strong, compelling push at the end, and it's going to be fascinating and entertaining to watch. It won't be any 2018 race like you alluded to, but the wild card will be interesting.
Every year, when I'm asked for like record predictions or season predictions, I always say that they're going to be in the mix. And the way I like to put it is, you will never do your Christmas shopping with them mathematically eliminated, with them far out of the picture, and they will ensure that. Like we said, I mean, maybe winning 3 in a row is a bit far fetched, obviously. But I think even if they win their next 2 games, if they beat the Raiders and then beat the Eagles, and even if they play the Chiefs well and still lose, I mean, they will be the talk of the town, through Thanksgiving, Black Friday time. I mean, that's the most predictable thing when it comes to them, obviously.
Oh yeah. I mean, even last year, which was kind of a disaster in a lot of ways, mathematically, they were still kind of in it in mid-December, and then they got the nail put in them, but they were hanging around for a while. And yeah, there's maybe even once or twice, I'm 25. There's maybe even once or twice in my life where the Cowboys have been cooked by the time it comes along. And there's usually some kind of extenuating circumstance that results in that happening.
Right.
Either quarterback injury or you just caught the injury bug.
Right.
It's usually something extreme that leads to that.
Yeah, and that's why, their win total, we use FanDuel as our preferred sports betting partner at SB Nation, was 9.5. And what I told people was that is insane to me. And I mean, it was insane because, to the point, when Dak Prescott or his predecessor, Tony Romo, when they are healthy, they're a 9, 10, 11 win team. That's not
Yeah.
like no one is saying like hang a banner or this is the mark of an elite franchise, but that's the way things go. And so you're right. It's generally been a quarterback injury, loss for the season, something that has, and even then, I mean, last year with that happening with Dak, they still won 7 games. And so I would not count them out by any stretch, especially after Tuesday's trades. That's not saying watch out, here they come, but I definitely could see them obviously being a part of the conversation.
No, I do. I absolutely I can too. And I do want to say this as well, just with you being a Cowboys reporter. Um, I've been saying this the past couple months. I feel like Dak gets disrespected a lot, if I'm being honest. I feel like a lot of people, especially around here, make fun of Dak, look down on Dak. And I'm watching what he's doing this year. And I know the last 2 weeks have been underwhelming, but I think that a lot of the time he's the glue that holds this offense together, and it's not talked about enough.
Yeah, I mean that's just life. I mean, that's
Yeah.
the way it's going to be, and we've all fought that fight. We've all had those arguments on the internet, and I think you reach a point of acceptance where you just understand that some people. I mean, this franchise is just it's a walking meme in a lot of ways. It's a walking joke, and they live under such a large shadow. And that's why, something else I say is at some point, and we may be gone from this earth, but at some point they will win the Super Bowl again. And whoever the quarterback is that does it, that dude will be viewed differently relative to his peers and relative to his contemporaries, because he will have been the one to deliver it from evil. He will be Frodo. I mean, and so it will be one Super Bowl win counts the same regardless of who you win it for. But I would offer that Nick Foles is revered differently than Eli Manning, by his city's fan base, just because he was the one. He was the one who did it finally for them. And granted, that was the first ever, but this would be the first in modern times, the first since they became the perpetual meme, the perpetual joke. And so if Dak is that guy, I mean, he will have a just suit of invincibility that accompanies him for the rest of his life.
Oh, if he is the guy that gets the Cowboys across the finish line and the hoist out Lombardi up again, there will be a statue
Right.
built up at the Star of him. If that's or even at AT&T Stadium itself, there will be a statue of Dak Prescott erected without a doubt. That will happen because it has felt like a lifetime since the Cowboys have been there, and it really has been. I mean, you look at teams in the NFL, and they do have one of the longest droughts right now. I mean, I know there's teams that haven't experienced it yet. Some that blow my mind, like the Vikings and the Chargers, not having ever hoisted a Lombardi. I think that's nuts. But I mean, yeah, it's been since my parents were in college that the Cowboys have won a Super Bowl, which is insane to think about.
The Ravens did not exist. I mean, like, think about that. I mean, there are a number of ways to context. John Elway did not have a Super Bowl of any kind, and he has since then 2 as a player, and then retired and entered the line of work of becoming an NFL general manager and built his own team, including with a member of Dallas Cowboys lore that won another. So, I mean, there's not enough embarrassing ways to talk about how long it's been.
That I never even thought about the Ravens thing. That's
oh yeah, that's probably the worst, just because they have 2. Like,
yeah.
I mean, and to be clear, they existed as the Browns, but like the Baltimore Ravens did not exist when the Cowboys last won a Super Bowl. My other favorite is Marvin Harrison was in college, senior, when that happened, and he also then entered the NFL, played his whole career, won a Super Bowl, sat out the mandatory period, was enshrined into the Hall of Fame, and had a son who was drafted into the NFL, and on Monday night whipped their ass. I mean, so like, it's just, there's a lot of ways to contextualize this whole situation.
Which I still can't believe that Marv was the guy to go off.
Right. Oh, I can. I mean, of course he was. Like, of course it was Marvin Harrison Jr. Of course.
Maybe that'll finally spark the. I mean, you saw a little bit with the Seattle game. Maybe that'll spark a little something for Marv. For Maserati Marv. I really do hope that's the case. But I wanted to ask you while you're on here, because I have a lot of followers here of the channel. I appreciate a lot that are either in sports journalism or are interested in getting into sports journalism. And so, what was your path of getting to where you are with SB Nation now? What did that look like?
I would not recommend it, to be clear, and it would not have worked if not for just being inordinately blessed. And God has worked so much through my life, and I've had such an incredible support system. My wife and my parents. I mean, because it was really, really, really hard, and I caught a lot of breaks. In 2015, I wanted to do this. I mean, I just I was active on Twitter and enjoyed it. And I think I wanted to be what nobody knew at the time to be, was a content creator. Nobody had heard of that or thought
Yeah.
of that at that point in time. And so I just started tweeting a lot, and just kind of being active. Des caught it, all these sorts of things at that moment in time. And I just finally said, okay, I've got to do something. I've got to reach out to someone. So I found a blog at the time. It was called Inside the Star, still exists. And I emailed the owner and said, hey, I want to be a part of this. And just kind of became a contractor for that site, wrote 5 articles a week. I knew of Blogging the Boys as a fan, as a user, and as I was writing for Inside the Star, we had a podcast that was kind of working on behalf of the site when podcasts were taking off. And so I reached out to the guy who was doing it, who's a good friend of mine now, and has had an amazing career in himself, in Bobby Belt. And I said, hey, Bobby, anytime you need, I want to be on the podcast. I want to do this. And just tried to do anything I could. I mean, tried to figure out whatever I could. And at the time I was living in San Antonio, and I'd met my now wife, and I saw a tweet one day that the local radio station, which was ESPN San Antonio at the time, was having an open mic, just kind of an open mic contest. It was called Rock the Mic, and you would go give your sports take, and there was a process. And I was very, very, very fortunate to win that, and that opened a lot of doors for me. Just got me into building, and that happened in 2016, which was Dak and Zeke's rookie year. And so the Cowboys were, I mean, again, it was just a really huge blessing of things lining up for me in that moment in time, and that the Cowboys were on this role, and they needed a Cowboys person a lot. And somebody always had a dentist appointment, or their kid had an appointment. They had to be out on a show. And so I would go, and I would work for free, which is a point of debate, obviously. And then the Super Bowl that year was in Houston. And so that was manageable for me in San Antonio. And they said, look, we can't pay for you to go, but we can get you a credential. If you want to come help out, just be some hands. And I had some family in Houston, so I drove and did that. And then the next year they needed somebody to run stats during high school games. I mean, just kind of kept saying yes to things. And then a few years later, reached out to Blogging the Boys, because again, I knew that they existed, and was kind of doing the same thing for them, and all this all at once, and not really having a permanent or full-time thing. And in 2018, this role opened up, and I had been at Blogging the Boys long enough, and had done enough things, some radio work and whatnot, to where it just made sense for me. And I was very, very fortunate to get this job, and I've had it ever since. And my mantra all along has just been to say yes to everything I can. And again, I've just been smiled upon by God, and like I said, my wife supported me, my parents supported me, and I've made friends who have asked me to do things and given me opportunities. And so it was a stroke of luck after luck after luck after luck, that I tried to marry with hard work as I could on my end. And so it was a very long and bumpy ride, and it was unique, and I understand everybody's is, but I would recommend trying to find a more stable path if that's possible for someone.
I mean, it's always the crooked path to success. I feel like everybody's path to success is crooked, but it's there's things that you have to sacrifice. The way that I always view it is, if you want to do something special, you got to do special things and make sacrifices. And that sounds like it directly relates to your story as it is.
Well, thank you. I mean, I talked about my faith and the way I've looked at it. I heard a sermon in 2017 that really changed my life and changed the way I thought about life. And I don't mean to make this about faith. People have their own thoughts and opinions and walks of life. But I do think it's applicable, even if you believe in whatever you believe in. The sermon talked about, there was a ladder that the pastor used, and he talked about how if you believe in God, you have to climb this ladder to do your part. You have to do the possible, so that God can do the impossible in your life. But because people ask for, people pray for, people yearn for, people hope for the impossible, but the impossible can't happen if you're not doing that. If you're not doing what is possible on your end, then the impossible simply can't happen. And that really changed my thought process on a lot of things, where I said, okay, I'm not doing all of the possible in my life. And so I tried to, and I fall short of that every day. But that really adjusted how I approach things, and made me want to do all of the possible I could, so the things that felt impossible and continue to feel impossible became more attainable, because I was doing the work on my side of things.
Well, yeah, you've got to control the controllables. I mean,
Right.
I think that a lot of us as Christians here, sometimes just expect a miracle, and when things aren't going your way, you're like, woe is me, what am I doing wrong? But like you sometimes have to do some introspection and say to yourself, all right, what am I doing? What effort am I putting forth to meet God where He is, so that
Right.
He can make the impossible or the miraculous happen? So it's not just Him doing it. You have to lean into it yourself. He's not just going to do it for you just because. It's a relationship.
Yeah, and to kind of just simply answer the first question, I would say, because things like this weren't commonplace, and I don't mean to sound old, or I don't want to make myself sound old, or I don't want to make myself feel old. But like the idea of having your own YouTube channel was still a very foreign idea, even in 2015. And so I mean, I get asked by some young people, some high school kids, what should I do? How should I? I also heard Pat McAfee say something once about the app Snapchat, which I don't really use anymore, but he talked about how that was a television studio in his pocket. And that also really warped the way I approached a lot of, I think about like some of the edits and things I see on TikTok, and that high school kids are doing, and I'm just amazed. And the opportunity for creation is so vast. And so get out there, start a YouTube channel, start a podcast, start a website, be on any level of social media, start creating your digital footprint. And the more you work, the more you do the possible, the more controllables that you kind of have your impact on, the more doors will open for you. That's a belief that I hold near and dear to my heart.
And I'm sure you could agree with me here, but the key is just getting started. I mean, I started this thing in 2023. I didn't know what I was doing. I still don't really know what I'm doing. Like I'm still learning every day. But to your point, it's gotten better, because when I started in 2023, I didn't even know what StreamYard was. Now I have you on StreamYard, and I've got graphics curated. It's the key is just getting started and taking that first step forward, and you're going to learn so much along the way. And I've always been a perfectionist too, and I think a lot of people are kind of wired like that, to where you overthink stuff before you do it, and the biggest thing is just taking that first step forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like we talked about the Quinn and Williams trade. Like you're not going to become a master at something until you're a beginner, and so you've got to. It's a really humbling thing, and in the world of content creation, I think everybody has a favorite YouTuber or podcast or whatever, and you think like, oh, I'll start this and I'll be that right away, and it just, I mean, I've had tweets or podcasts or articles that have taken off and done really well, but I've had like 300 times as many that only my wife and parents liked. You know what I mean? And so you just have to recognize that that's the game, and you're gonna bat 250 on a really good day, and if you do, you consider that a win. But there's going to be a lot of days where you strike out 4 times.
Oh yeah, I thought you get some real zonkers sometimes of even things you think that are going to perform well, and you're like, what,
Right.
like 6 likes on Instagram, you're like, that's it. And
Yeah.
then there was a reel I put out the other day that got 103,000. I'm just like, okay, hell yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it's the one, like you're saying, sometimes it's the the innocuous, like, I guess I'll post this, type thing,
Yeah.
and whatever, that was completely random, completely accidental, that you didn't put any thought into. That's the magic of the internet.
It was mindless. I put up on Sunday night before I went to bed. It was the last thing I did before I went to sleep. Woke up one day morning, and I was like, oh, okay, I'll take
Right
it.
on. Yeah.
but that's how this thing works. And so you said you got to have a tolerance for those highs and lows, and you build it after a while. But it's all about that tolerance.
No, I think that's really well said. That's a great mindset on life at large.
Well, thank you so much for coming on here, RJ. Talking Cowboys, talking life, talking career. You were a great guest to have on here, and always feel free to hop back on. You're great to have on here.
No, I appreciate it, Brian. For anyone unaware, Brian was very kind and gracious to wait a few minutes for me as I tended to my dogs and things. It was a hectic hump day evening for me, but I really enjoyed the chat, really enjoyed the conversation. Looking forward to doing it again. And if I don't talk to you audibly, I hope you and yours have a wonderful holiday season. That it's amazing, even if I know you don't care about the Cowboys, but you're not a fan of them. But even if the Cowboys don't, do all the things we manifested, I hope it's a wonderful time for you.
Thank you, and you as well, RJ. I hope that these weeks ahead, Thanksgiving, Christmas, are all fantastic, and I hope it's just a riveting photo finish for the Cowboys. I will be watching every game. I watch everybody's game, so I will be watching every Cowboys game.
Yeah, well said.
Well, thank you all for watching. Have a great day.